one of the things that helped take me to the next level big time was my pH doser.
Oh, yeah.
So to your point, it got hit at that pH. And I'll tell you, one thing was interesting. Blue Lab, actually, some years ago, shout out to Blue Lab, did a study where they took a control plant that had no pH control. And then they took, plants that I want to say every half a pH from like 4 all the way up to 9. So 4, 4.5, 5. And those were all consistent pHs. And then the one just floated wherever, right? Well, literally on both extremes, the 4 and the 9 performed better than
we're Jug Dealers. We're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jerin, Gabe, Grambo, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related, brought to you by the good people at 5/8 Distributing. And now all things are available at jugdealers.net and jugdealers.shop. Is that right?
Yes, jugdealers.net. And you can go right to the shopping site and get all this stuff that you see behind us, whether it's merchandise, bottles, etc., right at jugdealers.shop. You will see a lot more videos that we're actually getting up on the website. Grambo and I have been hard at work doing a bunch of videos. By the way, Gabe, very well, great to have you back in the studio.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I know.
Nice to be back in Colorado.
Yes.
Not those hot nights.
Yes. Not those hot, sticky nights. So I know we're going to, I believe next week, go over your full trip, do a little bit of an East Coast wrap up and kind of do some shout outs and talk about some of the stuff you saw out there. So a little bit of a teaser for next week. Also, I wanted to shout out Grow Time Garden Supply in Jeff City, Missouri. They will be at an event at the Regalia Hotel that our friends and associates at Dabs Stars. Shout out to Nick and Jonah, and for that matter,
that's the one in the Ozarks, right?
Yeah, it's the one down the Ozarks, Sunrise Beach, Missouri, which is down on Lake of the Ozarks. It's a Regalia Hotel. It's all cannabis friendly. You literally can be in the lobby smoking herb. You can be at the bar drinking and smoking herb. It's like an event that I've really never seen. Again, put it on by our good friends at Dabs Stars. They're kind of running the whole show down there. They've been doing these for a little while, but it looks like they just got the keys to the castle. So go down.
Low-key Jair's involved with that?
Absolutely. Right? Jair has been involved with that for a long time, and he's still openly involved with that. Jonah is his partner, and it's really, Jonah and Nick that really run around the world. I mean, these guys are, high quality hype men getting around. You can see they got 2.3 million followers.
That's crazy.
And so we will have
on a cannabis page.
On a cannabis page. They are a graduated.
Good on them, dude.
They're a grandfathered in cannabis account on Facebook. Actually,
look at that. That's one thing rosin's good for is sculpting.
It's sculpting. Give me a break, Gabe. Last but not least, all of our samples will be there at the Grow Time Garden Supply. We'll have a Dutch lighting innovation setup. We'll also have a bunch of Slicium samples. We'll have pesticide samples. We'll have pet boxes or pet packs that'll be for sale. Come down. There's a bunch of free stuff. We got a bunch of gear there with the Grow Time Garden Supply guys, and then go see them there in Jeff City as well. They got a great shop. I've been through it. Shout out to Aaron at Grow Time Garden Supply. If you guys do go, drop my name. Tell Aaron that Jerin sent you.
Tell Aaron that Jerin.
Yeah, I know. I was like, it took me a second. I was like, I want to process that.
I say that 20 times.
Yeah,
fast.
right. Exactly. So, but anyway, without further ado, we actually dude,
the questions they've been stacking up while I was on the road.
And thank you guys for being active. Grambo has been, kind of putting the word out there and grabbing. We wanted to use this platform to answer some of the most common questions that are coming through. So Grambo's been hard at work and putting some posts out, etc., getting some questions from you guys. And please never hesitate to put these out. I think these are great and valuable shows to do. It is a two-way street. Help us help you guys. If you have certain questions, whether it's on direct products, which again, I know that people had commented to you about, wanting to hear a little bit more about, New Millennium, specifically the story, how everything ties together,
and we're going to do an episode, I was on Grambo's show, but we had enough in there. We had enough in there that
Grambo
I said to Jayhawk, hey, we need to do something just a New Millennium.
And I'll say another great way to get that New Millennium information is if you go over to jugdealers.net, scroll all the way down to the bottom, join our mailing list. That's where we give away like discounts, special information. We're going to be doing some giveaways of the additives.
Didn't you do 7 days of Slicium?
I did 7 days of Slicium.
7 days.
We were going to take some of those mini bottles to the cup And then I got high. I forgot to give them out. That was going to be like, because we had 10 winners. I was going to throw it in the bag. I didn't. I forgot. So I gave them away on there. So thank you all, everybody.
Where was the farthest away you got a winner from?
Well, I only took American winners, but people from Australia, New Zealand.
That's why I was wondering, because I know
Germany. South Africa.
Oh, South Africa. Yeah. Shout out to South Africa. In fact, I'd like to use this as a nice little segue. Grambo, it was a question that kind of came up, and basically we're going to address it as one question, even though it came in a multitude of ways. We do have about 25% of our listeners are international.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is wild.
It's
By
wild.
the way, thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
really
Australia,
appreciate
England, dude, we see y'all
Germany,
for sure.
South Africa,
New Zealand.
Yeah.
And UK and Canada.
Dude, did we have like 2 listeners in Guam?
I believe,
dude. I was like, we're in Guam, baby.
Guam. So,
we see you.
The reality is, and unfortunately, for all those people, or most of those people, I shouldn't say all, and that's what we're going to address right now. It can be hard to get our products. It's not just as easy as getting up on JugDealers.shop, because we don't send to any international destinations there. However, people in Canada, we can send to you. If for some reason you have trouble using JugDealers.shop, go ahead and just scroll to the bottom and do a contact us. That message is going to go straight to me. I'll answer that. We'll figure that out. So Canada's no problem. Anybody in the UK, we are distributed by Dutch Garden Supplies there. Shout out to the boys at Dutch Garden Supplies. Ben's out there on the road kicking ass and taking names. Go run my boy Ben down. I believe you can get him on Instagram too at Ben Dutch Garden Supplies. So you can definitely get our products that way. Australia, I'm very sorry. I've definitely messaged a couple of you guys. I've done a couple of shipping quotes, and I'll tell you, it's brutal. So I'd give you the shit for free, but the shipping alone is going
to pay more for the shipping than it costs.
Okay. But that being said, we do have some associates that are over there, Australia, New Zealand. So it's definitely on our radar. Germany, you will start seeing our products in Germany as well. Spain, you can definitely get our products as well. Cinco. Yeah. CYNCO. Yeah. Cinco. So you can get our stuff through them there in the Barcelona area, etc. And then
is it Cinco 8? Cinco 8
it used to be Cinco 8. Now I think it's just Cinco.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think they just shortened it.
It's funny that it wasn't Cinco Ocho.
Well, that's why I was asking, because I was like, is it?
Look,
and that's fine.
Yeah. Look, well, let's just say it's not us, so we don't have that kind of decision. So
Cinco, okay.
Yeah, Cinco.
Okay.
CYNCO, I believe, if you look it up on Instagram.
Honestly, I like it. I think
Yeah, just Cinco. But anyway, so and they can distribute into the rest of Europe. So definitely Germany, you have an opportunity to be able to get it.
I know Jair's been.
Yeah, and Jair's been working over there quite a bit. So I will say, Germany, get ready. We will be there. I did make that trip out to Essen in February. We'll be back. It's definitely a great market. I know you guys are dying for it. Berlin was a crazy smash. So that's kind of our.
We had to do that wrap up because the guys asked me for questions, and I put the questions out to you guys. Right. And I'd say the number one question is, can I get a winter frost in Australia? Can I get winter frost in Canada? Can I get winter frost in the UK? Can I get winter frost? It's like, okay, we're going to lump that into one
question. So, and last but certainly not least, I have been down to Colombia. We have some associates down there. So I am working on getting into South America as well. Costa Rica, South America, Mexico. So be on the lookout. Jug Dealers out and about. We're doing everything we can. We're working on getting some new distribution. So
if other people could make it, they would. It's really just that simple.
Yeah. So anyway, Grambo, I'm glad you addressed that and just to let people know, hey, it was like, oh my gosh.
That wasn't a tangent. That was the answer to our first question.
Yes, that actually was. Okay. And now our second question, and this is from Farmer Dude 708, right? Is that 708?
Yes.
Farmer Dude 708. I'm guessing that's the zip code. Where is 708 zip code?
I can find out.
I feel like it's Cali, but
it feels like it's Cali's got so many. Okay, so while he looks that up, and I am just curious. So this one is, how many times can I use winter frost before my final week of flushing? So as you guys know, and if you don't know, winter frost is really a standalone pre-flush. You only use it in conjunction with our fulvic acid called Ruby.
Chicago.
Right? Chicago. All right. Shout out to Chicago. We do have a bunch of listeners there as well, including our boy Cortez.
In which, if you're in Chicago area, you can get it at Chicago Roots.
Chicago Roots. Thank you.
Marius.
Yes, that's right. That's your son's name.
That's my kid's name.
That's crazy.
Marius, the only dude I know in America named Marius.
That is there. Yes. So That should be easy enough for y'all to remember. So anyway, and I would even phrase that like somewhat different in saying, well, number one, you're using it correctly because of the way you phrase this as a pre-flush the second to last week. In other words, if you're only using Winter Frost and or Ruby from us, do whatever you want through 6 weeks. Week 7, use Winter Frost and Ruby if you've got it, but no other base nutrients, anything like that. If you happen to do less of a full week flush at the end, I do have some alternative directions. You could feel more than welcome to message me on JugDealers.net and I'll go through it a little more specifically. I just don't want it to be too confusing here. So use it that full second to last week. I like to say at least 3 waterings. So rather than saying how many times can I use it, because there's really not an over maximum. If you water twice a day, that's totally fine. I water twice a day and I use it 5, 6, sometimes even 7 days worth. So that's anywhere between 10 and 14 total waterings. Some people will do multiple injections in a day, whatever. I like, especially because of the people that do still hand water and are kind of almost on that every other day. If you do at least 3 waterings, that's a week worth of watering.
I generally tell people if you're doing a 14-day flush, I'll do 3 to 6 days really. A lot of it is knowing your genetics as well.
Sure.
If you're running a Chem D, you're running a sour, you're running anything like that, I might even cut my flush down to like 12 days, but I'll only run it for 3 days. I won't run it any longer.
Some are just really sensitive.
It'll just like your plants will blow out.
Yeah.
They will literally blow out.
But again,
a purple, anything like that, 5, 6, even 7 days, it really does help accentuate that color.
Without
those oils.
Yep.
But it's definitely, we always tell people it is genetic dependent for sure.
Anything is and everything is, but I would say get in at least 3 waterings. Yep. That's what I say.
100%.
And you can definitely do considerably more than that. You will see some that will respond a lot faster.
We got guys that'll start using it with their final nutrient programs at a lower dosage. So I mean,
sure, but again, that's why I don't want to get too confusing on that.
Shit.
There's other ways alternatively to use it for people that are doing like less of a flush or even no flush, but we're not going to talk about that here. Message me if you've got that because it just gets confusing if you do both of them at the same time. Historically, this is how we always developed it and advertise it. There are people because of just, differences in grow methods today that have be used in a different way.
Dude, we had the guy, we had the guy in Syracuse who put it on his ghost pepper and
changed overnight.
It wasn't It wasn't even overnight. Yeah, he did it on the morning feed, and by the evening he came home and it had changed color. So I mean, it definitely it
works.
It's a thing.
And what it does, just very quickly, it initiates senescence. Senescence is that natural ripening process. So it's going to bring in the colors that are within the genetics. It's not God. It's not going to create color.
It doesn't make green weed purple.
No, but if it has purple in there in the genetics, it's going to make it very purple. So
another thing too, and I'll point this out as well. If you're doing something like a GMO, something.
Thank you.
Something where you're kind of forcing it to finish. Like you're like, okay, let's wrap it up. Or Chem 4 would be another great example. But something where you want it to finish, you've gotten the bulk out of it that you need. 2-3 days, you hit it, and another 7 days of water, and you're in.
Gabe can attest to it. I can take GMO down in less than 9 weeks.
Yeah, it's like the music at the Oscars when it's like wrap it up.
Yeah, wrap it up. That's actually. I'll be honest with you. That's actually what I tell people about it. I'm like, this is the wrap it up. B. This is the hey, we're done here. Let's get the show on the road.
And I'm glad you do make that mention. Especially that's why it's favored and used heavily commercially, is because you've got the scheduled trimmers coming in.
Yeah.
Nobody's running a 10 or 12 week strain. People want some of those flavor profiles, and I can get.
I need you to finish up.
Can I ask? Do you suppose maybe, like as Gabe talked about, you get that onion out of your GMO? Do you suppose you pulling the plug winter style is giving it some?
Well, here's the thing. There's no question that
it's actually a good observation.
That is a great observation, and I would say that there's undoubtedly, because of the way those guys are gardening, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're taking it longer.
They're running it full. Yeah, they're running well, and they're just not. Yeah, they're not. You've always had a very strict schedule you just got to stick to.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Is that part of the autopot system too? Or?
Well, I think it's part of my space more than almost anything else. It's just like, I'll overgrow and outgrow the space if I'm not, real tight on things. And I run a mixed garden, which is one of the things that's great with winter frost. So even if I have something like a cookies or a chem or something like that responds longer. And I could do a little bit of a gradient harvest over it, but dude, it's also tough because there's some stuff that's like you hit it and immediately it's like, oh shit. Like, like a Crown OG I have, for example. I mean, it's, dude, at this point, it's got yellow crunchy families. Like you better get it or it's going to die.
And then that's the one thing I definitely tell people about knowing your genetics is like, hey, look, this is pro shit here. This is not, we want people to understand that like we give you stuff, it works. And a lot of people, there's a reason that people have bought it and tried to reverse engineer it and they can't figure it out. They don't know what there's a reason the program is called the secret sauce because you can go out and you can send it to your scientists and they can run it through their little testers all day. And what I'd say is, even beyond that, I say, get your baseline, know your genetics, get your baseline. You can definitely adjust it from there. So, all right, moving on. Thank you, Farmer Dude 708, by the way, for sending that in. Shout out to Farmer Dude 708. All right, on to Green Guy 404. It seems like common to use the zip code. What are the most common mistakes that new home growers make when starting their cannabis garden, and how can they avoid them? Okay, this is literally almost a whole show question, but I am going to address it. Let's each take one thing that we think specifically, and I can start, but let's just let's keep this a little bit concise. I'm going to say personally is overwatering. And I'll say overwatering because a new grower is so excited to be gardening that they want to mess with it too much, and that's, and especially if you're hand watering and you haven't, had somebody that's really coached you up on even just picking the pot up itself and how to, it's just as easy and probably easier to overwater than underwater. And especially when most people start in either soil or peat moss. Now, if you're in cocoa, that's going to be a lot more forgiving for the people that like watering. You can overwater cocoa, but it's a heck of a lot more difficult. It's tough, right? So I think that people do a really good job of focusing on all these other things, and then comes to the watering, and they just are over caring for their plants. Remember, guys, plants were here before us; they'll be here after us. Evolutionarily speaking, they are more highly evolved because why? They're autotrophs and we're heterotrophs. Autotrophs create their own food. Heterotrophs have to go out and seek their own food. So they're able to sit there in one spot and then their whole lives. Right. We go and eat the autotrophs, actually. Which is true. That's how, terrestrial mammals were able to come on land was from autotrophs, which is eat the food that doesn't run away.
Correct.
That's the easiest thing.
That's easy as a catch. You don't even have to club it over the head.
Especially if you can pick berries and it's delicious.
Right. Yeah. I do like berries. Anyway, so I really think that watering, that's my thing, is I would say, and I'll even expand that slightly and just say irregular watering practices. Because I do think some regularity on your watering, even whether it's a flood and drain or it is a drip system or a blue mat or something, sometimes having just a little bit of regularity so your plant can adjust goes a long way. But dude, we just mess with our plants too much. They're really brilliant.
If I throw a tip at you guys, one of the things, if you're overwatering, you suspect, like, how do you feel about foliaring some stuff? Like I always tell people, if you're overwatering, if it's yellowing out, maybe foliar something on.
That's actually not a bad idea at all, because that's the other thing that we tend to want to do is it does lock up that soil situation. Now it's not able to uptake because it is the stomata are closing. It's not transpiring. So people automatically go, shit, it looks all yellow. I need to get a food. Well, now you really can't put it through and now the root system's actually been damaged, right? So really you need to almost get a bunch of enzymes in there to just eat up some of that old and dead plant material. So it can be rather problematic. And that's why I also say getting a baseline, regardless of what you're doing and who you're using, doesn't matter if it's our stuff or not. This is an annual plant that things change really fast. So to try and catch up in a 60-day system, good luck. Take good notes and change something the next time. You're much better off than doing that than trying to fix something today.
It change one thing at a time.
Yeah. That's called science, by the way. That's a reduction of variables. Ultimately, and the goal is to reduce it to one single variable, which can be very tough when you talk about home growing, but reduction of as much as possible. So that's mine. Gabe, what's your one?
It's funny because I've been thinking about it as you've kind of gone through your thing. And I think one thing that a lot of people overlook is pH of runoff. I think a lot of people will come and they'll look at,
I like this one, Gabe.
They'll mix the juice and they'll go, hey, this is, I'm feeding it at this is what's going on. But, 9 times out of 10, if you see a purple stem, your pH on your runoff, meaning, so soil, media, whatever you're running, that is what dictates the pH of your runoff.
And we're not even looking at the amount of food that's coming in your runoff, which I would say would be the next level. But to start, and what's very, very easy to do, pHing your runoff. Gabe, I think that's a great one.
Yeah, so I think that's really a big one that people overlook. And then beyond that, you know, you and I have talked multiple times about the NC State saturated
I was hoping
media
you were,
test, you know, in which that's going to be the pH of your pH and EC of what's actually in the plant. So you wait an hour and then you do that test. But realistically, you know, we talk so much about grabbing data. Really, data is really what should be driving how you feed your plants, you know, because the plants send back that information.
They do. They give you all the information.
You have to read it, though.
But thank you. That's the difference. You can take down all the data that you want, but what are you going to do with it, right? How are you going to react to that? And I do think that some of these modern you know, techniques and data-driven processes.
There's a couple different. The Arroyo now has meters.
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of
these
stuff.
Data-driven is what I'll call them. These data-driven, what do I mean to say? Styles, if you will, are really important, but they're also taking data and then doing something with it. So then they're adjusting, obviously, their EC, their pH, their watering practices based on the information that's coming back. So, but like you said, you can take data all day long. And I also think you can over data yourself.
Oh, 100%.
I think that most people don't have the ability to have all that information. So again, let a plant be a plant, give it a good, consistent system. You know, I feel like one of the things to help take me to the next level, big time, was as basic as it sounds, my pH doser.
Oh yeah.
So to your point, it got hit at that pH. And I'll tell you one thing that was interesting. Blue Lab actually some years ago, shout out to Blue Lab, did a study where they took a control plant that had no pH control, and then they took, you know, plants that I want to say every half a pH from like 4 all the way up to 9. So 4, 4.5, 5, and those were all consistent pHs. And then the one just floated wherever, right? Well, literally on both extremes, the 4 and the 9 performed better than the one that floated in the control group that didn't have any control. And basically what that means is plants do have an ability to adjust. We've all seen that chart. It's why 5/8 distribution is called 5/8 distribution, the perfect pH for cannabis based on the ratios of micro and macronutrients that we want uptaken, right? But a plant can adjust over time. It's the difference is the consistency. So I can't give it 4 today and 9 tomorrow and 7 after that and 8.5 after that and 4.5 after that. So if you sit at a good consistent one, whether it's literally pick one. Is it 5/8? Is it 6.5? Is it 6.2? Is it 7.0? I mean, that your plant's going to perform better with a high level of consistency, you know, than jumping all over the place. So anyway, that's a test that I like to cite, and that's one of the things that I felt the consistency and the quality of my product went up massively when I heavily controlled the pH. So I just have an auto doser. Always gets hit at 5/8, you know, as I go through the system a little bit, just because I don't have so many things that are naturally knocking it down. Like, for example, once I get to winter frost, I usually do like 6.0. When I'm doing straight water, 6.5, 6.8, somewhere just under 7. You know what I mean? So anyway, Gabe, I thought that was a great one. Thank you very much for the question, Green Guy 404. I know that doesn't completely, I mean, literally that's like a whole show.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an entire, you know, if I was to go down you know, I think environment, like you were saying, watering, over lighting is a huge one, especially
I did that.
Especially with the LEDs.
Oh yeah, I did that.
One thing, it's funny. One thing when I first started growing, one thing we would actually do, we're talking back in the dinosaurs age when we were using single-ended halides, but the one thing you would do is you would put a plant on the floor, like far away from the outside the light circle. And then you'd start moving it in more and more and more. And then when the plant would start freaking out, you literally put like a piece of tape on the floor and you just know not to move.
Don't go farther than that.
When you transplanted the next time, you'd be like, okay, all the plants go over here. A piece of tape.
Know? That's awesome. That's awesome.
But yeah,
what is this? Amber? What? Gamber, can you help me with that?
I believe that was Amber Terps.
Okay, Amber Terps.
That might be a joke from Dude Gross Show. I think me and Scotty said that one.
Amber Terps.
We said that'd be a great cannabis stripper name.
It would be Amber
okay.
Terps.
And speaking of that, I want to chime in. If any of these questions you guys find interesting, you want a whole show about, throw it in the comments. We're here.
We are absolutely. Yeah, no. Again, this is a two-way street. We're totally willing to get out there. We actually need and want the feedback to keep this going. We want to give you guys what you're looking for. So if there's something that you're very interested in that we want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit more, Gabe and I are willing to go down that rabbit hole. Okay. Amber Terps is what we're going to go with. Can you share share some advanced tips or lesser known tricks that can significantly improve the yield and quality of cannabis plants for home growers. Wow, I kind of just answered that a little bit, but also
similar.
But also, here's what I would say too, Gabe, and I think that I know I was guilty of it. There was a time early in my growing career where I knew just enough that I thought I could get on the back of any bottle and read what was on there and put together my own hybridized nutrient system, right? So I had a base from here, and I probably had at the very least 5 different companies, maybe 8 different companies that I was using bottles from, okay? And so because of that, and now, let's fast forward, 15, 20 years later.
I used a lot of different bottles there for a while.
15, 20 years later, and really even specifically, once I really got with this company, I took a look at it and I realized that, oh man, there ain't shit on the back of that bottle. In fact, we have a specific question about that we'll talk about because, it's like, what is all on there? And in reality, it's like not everything's on the back of there. And I'm going to give you a really specific example. It's Ruby Fulvic, right? So it says, first off, it says Ruby Full, and then it's got symbols after it. So we're alluding to the fact it's Fulvic, but then you get on the back of the bottle and what's it's actually registered as? A molybdenum fertilizer. and what's in that molybdenum? 0.001%. Okay. So really quickly, I had this realization, oh shoot, you better literally get on with the company, get on with the chemist. Because here's what I promise you. Here's one thing I will promise you, folks out there, anybody that's listening and everybody that's listening, I don't give a shit what nutrient company you're using anywhere out in the world. They want you to be successful. So, I say that all the time.
We don't make money watching people fail.
So they are going to give you all 17 plant essential. That much I can absolutely guarantee for you. Now, what do? We obviously do some of the extras with those biostimulants we're pushing out. We're getting those positive stress responses. We are oil farmers, but guaranteed everybody's giving you the same 17 plant essential. But if you don't know exactly what's in the bottle, how can you sit there and piece those together from different companies? So I realized a long time ago, shit, I better just hop on and go with one company, with one chemist and buy into it. So I do think part of the reason and one of the things to answer this question is get on with a company that you know, you love, and you trust. Come on down to New Millennium, request a sample pack. You guys can always request samples through us. Hit us up at on JugDealers.net. Request samples. We'll get them out to you. See for yourself. The proof's in the pudding. Have your aha moment. I had mine. Gabe's had his. He didn't even want to use the shit. I started with the company and it's pissed. Like, I'm not going to use something I'm not going to sell something I don't use. So I started using it. I give it to my cousin. He takes one look at it. He goes, what the hell did you do different? I said, I knew it. So, reality is I'm not here to sell it to you. I'm here to put you in a position to sell yourself. So, has a really long answer.
Well, it reminds me of your pH answer. Sticking with one thing is better than doing something random.
Exactly. So we did kind of say on that one too, I really do think consistent pH. I think that even Gabe, what's he saying as far as consistent pH of runoff, I think all these things are going to really increase your yield and your quality and your consistency. Gabe, do you have anything to answer to that? Or add to that, I'm sorry.
Realistically, Dane and I kind of talked about it when I was back on the East Coast. It's one of the reasons I want to get him on the show is
shout out to Niche Cannabis.
Really driving your plants and not to
crop steering, but going on with that. Yeah.
Not even just crop steering because, a lot
Well, first off, I think that's a bastardized term, not to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean? I think you can crop steer without necessarily much automation.
A lot of people crop steer nutrient wise, but realistically, if you're using really clean, efficient nutrient, you're doing more crop steering environmentally and through the lighting and stuff like that.
And irrigation.
You see a lot of people who generally kind of baby their smaller plants and not for nothing, I generally grow bigger plants than most people. I see a lot of tables where you'll have 20 square feet and you'll have 9 to 12 to 18 plants stacked in that 20 square feet. And meanwhile, I have 5. Right. But and meanwhile, we've had the same amount of veg time, but my plants have just gotten a bit bigger. And realistically, we do that through foliar feeds. We do that through really optimizing the humidity and drybacks and stuff like that. And, I think when I was, in the larger facility, we'd maybe do 14 days in the block and then another week in the 3-gallon pot. And the only reason I understand a lot of people have stepped down to smaller receptacles. One thing I'll say on that is, that's fine. You can get the same size plant out of one of those smaller receptacles. What happens is, if you have a feeder that clogs,
Right.
if something gets missed, a lot of times you're not walking away from that with a plant that's still sellable, whereas in a 3-gallon pot, you have a lot better chance of walking away from that.
You like that happy medium a little bit, which I understand. And I'd say I'm in that area.
That's one of the big things is, that is one of you see a lot of people running 8-inch blocks, 1-gallon, 2-gallon pots. I have nothing wrong with those. The reality is I can get more weed off of my plant in the same amount of time.
I look at it as really, you're living on the edge a little bit more, and I like that you have a little bit of that buffer. But I do think that's a great question from what we're saying is amber terps, I believe.
Amber herbs.
I believe it's to
amber herbs, amber terps, amber herbs.
I wrote the
Oh, you wrote it down.
Okay.
So it's amber terps.
Never trust me.
Yeah,
shout out to amber terps.
That makes more sense. Well, let's see what the next one is.
With a Z.
AB 2447247. If that is correct.
24/7.
If that is your real name.
If that is your real name. That is, and if Grambo took it down correctly. Either way, I think it's a great question. What are the best practices for selecting the right cannabis strain for home growing?
How tall are your ceilings?
Yeah. How can home growers optimize their grow room environment to ensure the best plant health and yield? So again, I do think that very basically having good consistency, in temperature. I know that's like, yeah, no shit. Also good consistency in humidity. Again, humidity, if you're giving it the same thing, it's going to adjust a little bit.
I mean, this is almost, we're going to have an entire episode about from the tent to the bigger building.
Which is going to be great.
In which, I'll be honest with you, the first thing you have to think about when even talking about this question is, am I growing in a tent or am I growing in a room? Okay. So, and then from there, then you start really making the selections in which realistically, like, what do I like to like? What's your goals? What do you like to smoke? What flavors do you like?
I think that's
what are you looking
about.
for? And realistically, like, I think that's where those selections should start for anybody, because you want to have cannabis that not only are you happy to grow and smoke, but you're happy to share with people.
Well, and here's another thing that I would say. This is something that we've built on a lot of what we're talking about, but select it in your environment. And this is exactly what you're asking. So to Gabe's point, find something that you like some of those flavor profiles. I'll say that I know you mentioned Real Rocky Mountain. I think it's on the other episode, but he's got a great catalog. Real Rocky Mountain High 719. Anything he's got in there you can trust. Find something you think's in your profile.
Archive. There's so
many in-house,
first class genetics, clones wise. There's so many dope.
And then a lot of his own stuff. So point is though, the best thing you can do is if you have the ability, the time, and the patience, is to select whatever the flavor profiles you think you like in your own environment, because now you've literally selected for your environment. So the phenotype that's coming out is essentially your phenotype. And you're going to go, well, this one's a little bit sweeter and it's real lanky and it's weird, or this one's more dense, or this is that. Great. So now you get to select from a point of structure and a point of flavor. Now I'm more of a flavor guy, so I definitely like to look at that, maybe a little bit earlier on, and then structure second, right? Because I'm like, hey, if it's floppy or whatever, and I really like the flower, honestly, like glue does not grow that great. It's floppy a little bit.
Well,
I'll just tell the shit out of it.
Well, and that actually gets into the second part of the question, was how can home growers optimize their grow room environment? A lot of times, first off, you're going to work with that genetic. You're going to see the propensity to grow. You're going to either figure out, hey, am I going to trellis this thing? Am I going to stake this thing? How am I going to scrog this thing?
Does it do well with topping? What is all?
Dude, I got buddies that do DWC that definitely. If you're in a state where if you're in a place like Maryland where you only have a 4-plant count, well, look, there's a way to get 3 ounces off of one plant. There's a way to get 500 grams off of that plant. So, and a lot of that's going to be training, how you scrog it out. So realistically, it's going to be for the situation that you're in, as far as how you optimize that growing
environment. And we are
environment.
going to talk a lot about that specifically, so I don't want to get stuck up on that, but it is a good question, and we will continue to address that in future episodes.
And then, you're definitely going to want to tune into that episode, because the reality is, whatever you do, no matter how big, how small, that environment that you're creating needs to be a self-contained, perfect environment, no matter how big or small. If it's the old Phototron, if it's a tent, if it's a 10 by 10 room or whatever else you're doing, the idea is that you're giving it everything it needs, exactly what it needs.
The same basic parameters apply. Now, are you going to have to use different equipment to do so? And you have different parameters? Absolutely. So definitely tune in on that one. Again, thank you very much. AB 2427 24/7 24/7, something like that. Grambo might screw that one up too, but great question. I like this one a lot too, especially the fact that we came off of, recently doing some entomology episodes, etc. But Luke, 555, 555, 555. Okay, 555. What are, and this is great for us, what are some effective pest control methods for home growers that are safe and organic? How do you recommend home growers manage their nutrient schedules to avoid overfeeding or underfeeding their plants?
You want to take part one? I'll take part two.
Luke sounds great. Luke snuck in a double. Then.
Yeah, he did. That was all right. Good on you, Luke. I also, my son's name is Luke and I call him Luke Duke. So this is great. Yeah, I think that's great.
You're kidding me. That's
pretty funny.
I think, did your son ask this question?
Yeah, he might know a little bit about growing. Okay, I think that's a great idea to split this up. I'll do half. We'll have Gabe do half. So I'll start with what are some effective pest control methods for home growers that are safe and organic. This one feels like a little bit of a softball because we do have some great products that are available on JugDealers.shop. We have our EcoWorks, which will be soon
all
called
25B.
All 25B. So it is going to be that safe and organic for food production, etc. Can be used in commercial production, can be used in home gardens, can be used on cannabis, can be used on food, can really be used on anything. So it is, we've got the EcoWorks, which is going to be called, what is it going to be called? AI, actually.
Yeah, that's why you guys might not see it if you go to, one of the questions was, I didn't get it in time, is, hey, only 2 of the trio is online.
Good catch, people.
It's being name changed. It will be up shortly.
And so that's Azadirachtin indica. So it is a cold pressed neem oil. So hence the AI. So it's a little bit about, play on words there. But those are coupled with the multi, which is really for thrips, for fungus gnats, for things like that. And then we've
really effective too. I've been getting a ton of good feedback from people on that stuff as far as the thrips. It's really effective. Again, you're using this as part of an IPM program, so it's not your standalone.
It's all
you're going to be rotating between whatever other products you enjoy using.
All that,
but the reality is, as a tool in your quiver, it definitely works.
And then flopping it back and forth with the russet, which is the only one to my knowledge that has that in the name that specifically targets russet mites. This is from the same manufacturer. This is from Sin Ryan, which is actually somebody that we're looking on bringing on as well. He is the guy that, really Azadirachtin, Azatrol, Azatrol, Azamax, all those kind of things. Azadirachtin is what's in them. But anyway, he's an Indian guy. Consider him the neem man. He's made his whole career on it, has developed some of these products that we've been using, all of us that have been growing for a very, very long time. So he's been working on some of these, again, 25B based oil-based products. And the russet's the only one that I know that has that specifically. So any mites, obviously spider mites and things like that, broad mites, but very specifically russet mites. And again, I can report to you that stuff really, really does work. And I do think as another guest that we're going to have in sometime soon is a friend of mine that does a lot of consulting. I went to school with him together at CSU. He does a lot of stuff specifically in pest control and pest management. He's actually out of Puerto Rico now. But I think he'd have some really good information to couple with some of the stuff that we've, what we've put out there in some of the last bug episodes. So those are the things that I would say right off the bat are obviously things that we have available. There's a lot of other soap-based products that are organic out there. Micronized sulfur is something that I would mention specifically for russet mites. It is very effective. And there's a number of different companies out there that have that.
And really PM too.
Yep, exactly. So what I would say, even more so than focusing on specific products, focusing on the active ingredients. And usually there's a multitude of different products and you're really just looking for that particular active ingredient. But, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So always keep that in mind. You can use our products on a preventative level and also as a knockdown level. I also use them, about to 3 weeks of flower as well. So I'll even use it, fairly far into flower, more so than I would a lot of other products because it does run super clean. The plants actually seem to kind of like it. Almost gives them a little bit of a natural foliar feed because that cold pressed neem oil does have some micronutrients and other natural stuff in there. So it's kind of a nice one.
What was let me get you got slide it down
part two.
Slide it down just a little bit. How do you recommend home growers manage their nutrient schedules to avoid overfeeding or underfeeding their plants? I mean, a lot of it, first off, is you're going to want to monitor your plants. Just look at things, plants are going to show you signs as far as knowing whether you're dealing with micro or macronutrients, how mobile they are in the soil. or mobile they are in the plant. I mean, obviously, if you start seeing things getting yellow down low, means you're probably running some nitrogen issues
or anything that's mobile specifically.
Yeah, mobile specifically.
Yep.
Like I was saying earlier, realistically, you're going to want to monitor your leachates. Like I had said to the previous question, you're going to want to use that NC State. Not only you're going to want to use the pour through extracted from NC State, but you're just going to monitor as you water. So water, collect in a green dish. Just check it out. See if it matches. Realistically, if the leachate that comes out is lower than what you're feeding, you probably need to up your feed a little bit. If the leachate is higher than what you're feeding and the plant looks great, then you're going to want to keep an eye on it. Just keep things steady. The reality is at that point, once you start seeing higher nutrients than what you're feeding, you get up in the 3s, the 4s, you just want to watch your drybacks, make sure things don't get too dry. And when they do, if they do not give them just enough water to revive them. You're going to want to give them a bunch of water so that you flush out any of the salts that have built up in there. That's a big thing.
Thank you for addressing that.
That's one thing you see a lot of people do is they'll come in, they've been stacking this nutrient. All of a sudden they'll come in, they'll water it just enough to get it to perk up again. But what'll happen is it'll concentrate those salts and all of a sudden they'll get a big injection of salt. It'll fry those root hairs because you've gotten things so hot. And then once those root hairs are cooked, the plant has no way to uptake micronutrients. And then you start seeing all kinds of other issues. So the reality is you just want to come in. If you see them get a little dry, a little hot, you're going to want to water them through. A pro tip from us, one thing that the Ruby is great for when that happens is you're going to add 5, 10, even I've seen as much as high 15 mils of Ruby.
But 10, very, very safe at there. Yeah.
But you're going to just use it, help flush things out. It's going to bond with some of those excess salts, really help strip it out. And really what it'll do is recondition that soil so that things are not completely out of whack.
And I would even say as a slight addition to that, and if you could pull that up, actually the Rhizium, one of our newest products, that's something that's going to, that stuff is badass.
You put
is there a place that it's
you put roots
online? Actually, I'm not sure if I know where to find.
Well, we don't have it officially out there yet. So the only thing what we'll do is we'll make sure and post on
that was a question we had that some people asked. Can you ask if you go through the JugDealers.net?
You can request these products because I can give them out of samples. Yeah, I can give them out of samples. So if you guys are interested in Rhizium, but what it does is it focuses on the rhizosheath area. So like Gabe mentioned, if you fried all those root hairs off, what it's going to do is promote root hair growth, which is where the surface area.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's
we've seen it grow perfectly beautiful white roots out of like slimy.
Yeah.
Brown.
And it definitely it's very effective in this particular situation where you have overwatered, you do have root death, you do have some lockout. So you hit it with Ruby to flush everything out. Then you come back with Rhizium behind it to really get that regenerated growth in that specific area of the rhizosheath, which is where everything's uptaken. That's what you need. 1 milligallon too, super concentrated. Very, very cool product. We're in the process of
roots on a popsicle stick with that stuff.
Roots on a popsicle stick. So I think, So anyway, thank you, Luke.
What do we got time for?
I think we're going to do one more. I think we're getting to Graham Fam, Mr. Graham Fam,
which is a straight up shout out to me. That's what I call all my fans.
All right. Well, appropriate then. And we haven't got to all of them. And honestly, guys, we'll probably sprinkle another one in within the next few episodes. Please keep your
keep them coming, dude. We love answering. It keeps us sharp too.
Keeps us sharp. All right, Graham Fam, can you explain the importance of pH levels? And I actually like ending on this because we've talked so much about this.
Yeah, we covered it about.
Can you explain the importance of pH levels in cannabis cultivation and how home growers can monitor and adjust pH effectively? So what I'd say is I think we've actually answered this pretty well, but I will make a shameless plug on this. And I said it, what was it, Grambo, 71, 72 times?
Yeah. It's a 71.
Make sure to calibrate your pH pen or your pH probe or whatever it happens to be. It literally, if you're in a lab, you would calibrate that thing before every single
use. And you recommend doing both tests. Yeah. Don't just do high or low, do both.
So realistically, in a commercial setting, I'm calibrating my pens every day.
Every day.
Another pro tip that you're going to want to go with here is don't But when it comes to your calibration, your solution, your 7 and your 4, do not buy giant bottles that will last you for 5 months, because that juice in that bottle goes bad. And that's actually something I learned from the guys at Way to Grow years ago.
Well, because it's going to evaporate out a little bit. So now it's got a higher salt content, right?
Yep,
So like
so buy smaller bottles, go through them quicker. But don't, now if you work in a big commercial grow and you go through that bottle in, let's say, a month,
no problem.
Then you're in good shape.
I always had pH nightmares, and I had one GH bottle for like 2 years.
That was the problem.
So what I'll also say is,
Gabe.
What I'll also say is, if you're in any commercial facility, always have a spare. The other thing as well is
double check it always.
I will tell you right now, freaking now, okay, this is the biggest thing. It drives
Listen up, folks.
Drives me up a wall with people. If your stems are turning purple,
yes,
you do not have a phosphorus deficiency. The pH in your soil is probably below 5.7 or 5.6. I'll throw you $100 bill on it right now, because the truth of the matter is, like Jerin stated earlier, nobody who makes nutrients wants you to fail.
Nope.
Everybody who makes nutrients that knows that most water you get out of the tap is going to be 7.2 or above. Because
why is that? Because
it corrodes the pipes if it's below that. So all the nutrient companies know this, and they generally want your water to be somewhere around 5.8, which is why the company we work for is called 5.8, because it is the perfect pH. But as soon as you start getting to 5.6, all of a sudden that phosphorus is unavailable. And the other thing I was going to say on top of it is, if you're using pH down 9 times out of 10, especially on a commercial scale, because citric acid, people say, I use citric acid. On a commercial scale, you were dumping that stuff in by the gallon.
Yeah, I can't be doing that. It just doesn't make sense.
Most pH down is phosphoric acid. So if your plants already are getting phosphorus from the nutrient guys, and then you're adding phosphoric acid, I am going to bet 9 times out of 10 that there is plenty of phosphorus in there, and that you have gotten below 5.7 or 5.6, and that phosphorus is unavailable. So understanding this is paramount. So do not ask the question, is it phosphorus deficient? Ask, is it phosphorus unavailable?
And I think that's a really good point. I mean, even in something like in a natural situation with iron, for example, here in Colorado, any alkaline soil binds up iron, which is why you have to use a chelated iron for the iron to actually get to it. That's why you see that chlorosis, because iron is an essential part of chlorophyll
building
production.
Block of chlorophyll. Yeah.
Right. So that's why you see that yellowing, right? It's not a lack of something. It's a lack of availability.
It's there. It's just
there. It's not available.
And that's why we always talk about chelation.
Can I ask too, because I've heard you guys speak on this, the difference between, you guys use kind of a higher pH than a lot of people would expect in flower. You're like, what's the difference between veg and flower for pH?
So me personally, I clone at around 5.5. Acid produces roots. So does phosphorus. Now you would think those two don't go hand in hand. I see plenty of people who clone at 5.8. That's fine. Generally in veg, I'm at 5.8 through 6.0. As I start flower, I'm at 6.0. As I go through flower, usually towards the end, I'm at usually anywhere from between 6.3 to 6.5. Reality is, as your plant is finishing, pH is diving. So there's really no reason to pH down any water towards the end, because again,
it's going to pull it down anyway.
Yeah, it's going to pull it down anyway.
And for me, a lot of times, especially when I'm really dumping a lot of newts and I just don't want to use that much up, I'll end up doing, like I said, but again, in that we say New Millennium is great from 5.8 to 6.5. And again, I think consistency is one of the biggest things. So I do think a really nice piece of equipment is a pH doser, just to be able to set whatever that is you want. You can adjust that when you want. It's a very basic concept. And that's something that, again, I feel like, coupling really high quality available nutrients, with a control system like that to just keep that consistency. I think that's really, really big. So, shout out to our Gram fam. And thank you guys all for your questions. We'll continue to do this. Hopefully you do enjoy this. I am going to end this by an individual question for both myself and Gabe. It's off the other page, but the first one is, and these questions were specific. One
favorite jam band? What is it? Favorite?
I don't know.
Favorite brand of sneaker? What is it?
I'm gonna do Gabe first. Okay. Question for Gabe: what is the most important part of setting up a home grow? I'm about to build a 6x4 room, and I'm open to ideas, Mr. McCrab Pube. Mr. McCrapube.
Mr. McCrapube. What is the most important? The most important thing is setting up your room so it has all facets of what you need. So we need cooling, lighting, heating, or cooling, lighting, dehumidification, and humidification capabilities. So generally, you're going to put a little humidifier in there. You're going to want to tap it in. Dehumidification, same thing. And then you want to have some decent controls, you know? And so like we always say, we talk about that pyramid. We talk about that pyramid and the most important thing being environment. So you really are trying to, whether you're doing a tent, whether you're doing a room, whatever you're doing, you want to build a completely sealed, independent environment. And the other thing I would say that's really paramount is, as long as you can afford it, I understand it's tough for some people, but insulation. You know, insulation and keeping it insulated. I can tell you in my house, I don't have my ceiling insulated in my room.
And you can tell
that. And when I walk above my lights, I definitely feel a little hot spot in the floor.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Good tip. Pro tip.
So it's definitely one of those things, you know, no matter how big a building you're doing or whatever you're doing. And if you're in a tent, same thing. There's really cool setups. There's a NIWA. Right. So the NIWA is like that little power strip where it has different individual settings for each plug on it.
So you can plug in your fan, you can plug in your DU, you can put in,
So what is that called?
It's called the NIWA. Yeah, the NIWA.
Right, check
you know, really, really cool little piece of equipment. You know, AC Infinity makes some neat things, but you want to have basically real good airflow. If you're in that tent, you want to have, you know, kind of a fan at the bottom, a fan at the top. And again, like I was saying earlier, you don't want to overlight things. People, I think.
Oh man, I remember throwing 2 750s and a plasma and a 5x5 one time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was blasting it out, and I was on the whoopsie do. Yeah. Turns out there is too much, and again, I think really in a nutshell, it's consistency, right? And really building in that environment and really taking that into consideration. And here's the other thing, you know, CO2, for example, that's one of the things that I would say. So many people come into the shop and look at that at the beginning. I'm like, bro, you need so many other things.
Get everything else going.
Get everything else going. Remember, guys, a terrarium does work, and that's a plugged environment because plant roots are bringing in oxygen and putting off CO2, and the leaves are taking CO2 and putting off oxygen, so they can take care of itself. It's a whole system. Think about a terrarium. Look it up. Anyway,
great question. Great question. Thank you so much, man.
And thank you all around. The last one, I guess, and this one's
what's your last question?
For myself. This one's a pretty easy one, but thank you, DC. It's a great question. And I do actually like that there's, you know, that people are actually asking direct questions for us. But anyway, Jerin, if you could only have one, would you pick flower or concentrates? What do you think, Gabe? What do you think it is, Gabe, for me?
I mean, for you, we all know what it is for me.
Yeah,
but for you, I would think it's flower.
It's flower. Yeah, I would say, like, if it was me on the desert island, I would need piles and piles of flower for sure. I just do. Been a big joint smoker for a long time.
So I'm going to say something. Again, we discussed you giving that Gorilla Glue cut to our friend Eugene Monroe and him growing it. I quit smoking cigarettes 25 years ago.
Right.
But I still feel like I'm a smoker. Something like I get that oral fixation. And I smoke. A lot of people have said to me in the last 2 weeks, hey, Gabe, I've seen you smoking a lot more flower than I ever see you smoke. And I gotta say, like, when it's really enjoyable, delicious, really well-grown flower, oh God, it's hard to say no.
Man, it's hard to say no. I just think that the variation and the quality and just the expression of the plant. And I'm so in, like, because I'm also into the process, which is part of like the habituation, right? It's cutting it up or breaking it up or doing how everybody does. You know, some people do it in a grinder.
Yeah,
I literally cut it up.
Yeah, anytime you watch Nicotine, does it like a bowl.
Right,
and
everybody has their
thing.
I've
very ritualistic.
I've cut up it with sewing scissors in a shot glass for 20 years. You know what I mean? Why? Because, you know, my buddy,
the grinder tech nowadays.
Look, to each his own, right? But we all have our ritual that we like to do. So for me, that's one part that I love about flower is there is a ritual aspect to that. And I get to experience the cannabis on many levels, right? Because we also like to talk about that we consume in 3 ways, right? We consume with our eyes first, then we consume with our nose, and finally we actually consume with our mouth. So, really, really, really well done flower, and especially Gorilla Glue. I love you, GG4.
Gene's glue it's insane.
This came out just so.
There you go.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, we will wrap up this latest edition, our question edition.
Yeah, dude.
Of the Jug Dealers.
This was a good. We're going to do this a lot because you guys, you dropped a lot. I learned a lot in this episode. This was good.
I look. Ultimately, I think that's what the people want. We want to give you the information.
I want to. Yeah, next time I want to get the. I want to get the Gator hater question about pruning and training techniques.
We've got. I mean, honestly,
Gator hater.
We got Time Lord. We got Gator hater. We got Ozzy Oz. Oh, guys, we will be getting with these.
Yeah,
Grambo did a great job.
We will definitely get back to these because we appreciate the questions. And hey, on some of these questions too, shout out where you're from. I want to know where I'm answering from. So
right,
I want to see some of these questions. Tell me where you're from. We love you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening, guys. Until next time, peace out.
Stay safe.
Appreciate you.